Yo, so we are on to the 64 C10 swap. I've obviously somewhat started. Transmission's put on, converters put on, everything's bolted up, basically ready to go in. I just did the driver's side motor mount. I want to show you guys the passenger side because the mounts that came with, or that he brought, came with the kit with those frame mounts, and of course they don't say driver's side or passenger side. So I went and got my ICT swap plates that I've had for years now, just sitting around, and they obviously tell you which side they go on. So I just met these are actually the same exact thing as each other, so you can just get the ICT mounts or ICT plates. They're literally the same exact thing. The only thing that's different is that area, but all this is exactly the same. So that's how I figured out which side goes on which, because if you put the wrong side on there, you won't have fitment issues, but you'll have issues as far as where the engine transmission sit front and back, and it's pretty easy to tell once you go to set it in that something's not right. So that's something I wanted to just show you guys real quick before I put that on. The Suburban should be gone tomorrow, but as of now, those are the last things I got to put on, and then I'm gonna roll it on in there and just set it in, and then I'll be done for the night. So I will see y'all tomorrow, because there's no point in videotaping this, as I'm sure you can imagine how it goes. So I'll see y'all in a minute. Okay, fine, you can watch me, just don't slow me down because it's getting dark and my back hurts. So I'm trying to get this over with. All right, it's been a couple days for me, but not for you. Let's show you what I've been dealing with. So you saw me stab the engine transmission in and got it bolted in. Well, next day I came out and I was about to start putting everything on the engine to get it running, and I said, let me test fit the headers real quick just to see. And sure enough, that turned into about a 3.5 hour ordeal with these Amazon headers not fitting at all. These are definitely not meant for this specific year model or year models. So I had to go at the frame for hours. I didn't want to just, so I cut a piece, and that wasn't enough. And I didn't want to just keep cutting and then end up cutting too much, so I just grinded until they fit. There's still a little gap here, but so I got these to finally fit on the passenger side. The driver side was more of a pain, because not only did I have to do the same thing here, but I also had to do it down there. You can see that groove, and then right there you can see that big groove, because the bottom, once it was pressed all the way up against it, just like that, you can hear it. So been dealing with that. This one is actually done. That's just barely hitting on that tube right there, but it's set into where the bolts will go into it and the headers, and we are finally done with that end. So now I gotta pull them back off, and I gotta clean this up, all the metal and stuff, and then I'm gonna paint where it's all cut up, and then let that dry. And then I probably won't put the headers back on until after I get the intake and coil packs and harness on. That way it's just easier for me to get to the starter and the crank sensor, and then I'll put the headers back on, and then we can attempt to fire it up. So we'll see if I videotape anything in between. I was actually gonna videotape me putting the headers on just as kind of a filler, because I know people like watching the work actually get done in videos, as I do sometimes. But glad I didn't videotape that, because there's no way. That was literally 3 hours of grinding, lifting the engine up, pulling the headers off, grinding, cutting, putting the engine back down, test fitting them, picking them back up, pulling the headers back off, grinding, putting them back down, test fitting, and now it was just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. But we're finally done, and hopefully everything else just falls into place now. So we will see. So putting the valley cover on, I'll put on the knock sensors, then I'll put in the intake, and then throw on the water pump. I'll do the valve covers, I'm gonna throw a mechanical gauge on it, even though it's getting decoded digital, and it'll be a completely different gate. It'll be a completely different fitting, I guess you would call it. But just when I test run it, obviously I want to make sure it has oil pressure, because I'm going to test run it before I hook up decoded digital. But something I like to do when I'm doing this is, obviously you can see the cam. I like to just throw oil on it while it's there and it's out in the open. And since it's a new cam too, just to give it some protection. And then I usually just fill up the oil pan this way, just because, no specific reason other than just getting the cam all lubed up, even though it has that assembly lube on it, just a little extra protection. But let's start putting this thing together finally. So next day, it got a little late last night and got dark, so I couldn't show this, but obviously got more done. Valley cover, knock sensors, intakes on. I cleaned this intake the best I could. 2 bottles of engine degreaser, some of the awesome cleaner I've showed in previous videos. I mean, it's as clean as it's gonna get, unless I was to just set it in maybe cleaner for a night. But then there's no telling what that cleaner would do to the actual plastic. So maybe a detailer can clean it up a lot nicer, but that's as good as I could get it here in my driveway. Got the valve covers on. It's looking more like an engine. I'll probably take a little bit of Scotch-Brite and just kind of clean the heads up a little bit more. You're not going to see much of the heads because an AC bracket's going right there, and then the main truck power steering alternator bracket's going right there. So all you're really going to see is here, and then, well, probably really not any of that, because the fenders are going to be, or the inner fender wells are going to be right there anyways. I left this side off so that I can easily get to the crank sensor and the starter, and then I'll put that header on. I mean, there's really, just to get it running, there's nothing else. I just got to hook up these fuel lines, feed and return, and the wiring, and then I can fire it off. Hopefully I remember to put the rest of the oil in it. I'll leave this off just so I remember, or maybe I'll just leave it off and not remember. I don't know, but I'll see you when I get there. All right, so we're here. I got the passenger side header on, even though I said I wasn't gonna put it on until I did the harness and whatnot, but that's a good enough gap and in between that I can get my fingers and hands in there when I need to. At the point where I'm building oil pressure. I just did it, but I'm gonna show you guys, obviously. This is how I do it. No harness hooked up, no nothing. I just got a little push button, And then I got it hooked up to a mechanical gauge, even though the mechanical gauge isn't staying. We just obviously want to see it's getting some type of oil pressure before we go starting it. Or if you're one of those people, which you can be, don't even worry about, skip this step, throw oil in it and send it. You'll either know or you won't know if it's got oil pressure then. But this is how I do it. You're not gonna get full 40 psi like you will when it's running, because obviously the RPMs are gonna be much higher than just sitting here doing it this way. But I'm gonna show you guys this is how I do it. Fill it up with oil and just turn it over until and that's about as high as you'll get it. It's just above 25. Once it's running, it should sit about 40 with the new milling oil pump. But we continue on. Just me to record. We got 39 seconds.
Why do you have 39 seconds?
So it has been a couple more days, and I just got to working on this today. I'm doing the transcooler lines. Had to drill a new hole for the transcooler line to go through the frame. I got the wiring harness ran through the firewall. There was like a factory, what's interesting, there's a factory 2-inch hole right there that I ran all the harness through. I got it somewhat tucked in and tucked, I guess you would say, so it looks better. I got the fuel line hooked up. I have to make this video short because I'm running out of room in my phone, of course, so hopefully it doesn't give me a problem trying to upload this video. But we're gonna make this part 1 so that I can delete all these videos and make room. And the next part, I mean, it should be the completed truck on my end with the gauges and whatnot. So I will see you guys on part 2.